Hi everybody, and welcome to Observing with Webb for December of 2016, where the armchair astronomer figures out what they're looking at, why it's so cool, and what they should check out next. Now, by the way, you can also check out my podcast, which is an audio slightly different version on Podbean. That would be MrWebb.podbean.com. And also I have a Twitter feed, MrWebbPV, that you can check out as well. Now, this year, December, brings us good views of Venus, Mars, and Jupiter. Also, maybe some Geminid meteor showers, a good lunar occultation of Aldebaran, and hopefully, some good news for Pequea Valley Planetarium. So, if you recall, I was trying to get you guys to vote for me to win $100,000. Now, they're just now starting to get that information out there. They've announced 2 of the 6 winners just yesterday as of this recording. This is Wednesday, so that was Tuesday. Anyway, so the announcements are going out. I don't know when I'm going to find out, if I find out or whatever. But I'm still confident. I just don't know when it's going to happen. So keep your fingers crossed, and hopefully we'll get there. I'm very confident in our community, but you never know, right? So, yeah, I'm going to start off by talking about the planets, then talk about the events for the month, and then move on to the constellations. So, as far as planets go, you've got a bunch. You've got 2 or 3 of them in the west after sunset, and you've got one of them coming up in the east in the morning. So I'm going to split the time there. Now, what I have this set for is December 1st, for sunset, which is about 4:40 p.m. Now, you kind of need to let it get a little darker, so I'm going to go to about 5:30, and as you can see, Mercury that was down here is kind of gone. So technically, though, you can see Mercury a little bit in the beginning of the month, but I'm not planning on looking for it. You need very clear skies, very clear horizon, and maybe binoculars to find it, so I wouldn't worry about it. But the focus here is on Venus and Mars, and so I'm going to put it to about 5:30. It should be dark enough by then, and at 5:30 in the beginning of the month, Venus is about 17 degrees above the horizon, about 20, so about 2 fist widths, and Mars is about 10 degrees higher than that at 30 degrees. So you'll see these two out there. Now, Venus is going to be super bright as usual. Venus will be the first object other than the moon, but the first object that you'll be able to see as the sun goes down and as the dusk fades away. And yeah, so look for Venus. It's the first thing you're going to find. Mars is going to be not one of the last, but one of the later ones, and it's up here in Capricornus. Now, let's take a look and see what happens throughout the month. Oh, by the way, quick aside, those planets will set, let's see, Venus will set a little bit after 7, and Mars will set a little after 9. So you've got about 2 hours in between them, but you've got some time to see them. Okay, but I would get out before 6:30 at the latest. But let's see what happens throughout the month. So I'm just going to keep moving this forward in steps. And you notice Mars is moving away from Capricornus. Venus is moving toward it. And they're actually getting a little bit closer. You can ignore that comet. I think that's a data glitch in Starry Night. But Venus and Mars are actually getting closer and closer throughout the month. You can also ignore Neptune, although if you have a telescope, you might want to look at it, but you can't see it with your naked eye. And then on the 31st, Venus and Mars are actually pretty close together. But actually, now that I'm here, Neptune and Mars are pretty close together. In fact, let's see, they are, about 1/4 of a degree apart. That might be a really good one to look at in a telescope. Let's see. Yeah, that's the closest on December 31st. So New Year's Eve, you can go out there. Let's see. Let's take a look at it a little bit darker. Okay, and so those won't be close enough to get in one telescope view probably. I don't know. Ask Lane. He knows what he's talking about. Anyway, For the beginner, though, which is what I try to focus on, you've got Venus and Mars up there in the southwest, okay? And actually, by the end of the month, Venus doesn't set until about 8 o'clock, which gives it even more time to be looked at. So, anyway, yeah. So those are the sunset planets. Let me switch around. I'm going to look to the east, okay? And then I'm going to switch it to sunrise. Excuse me. Went a little bit far because in the winter the sun actually rises in the southeast. So to find Jupiter in the morning, you got to get out after 3:30 in the morning, toward the beginning of the month, and after 2 a.m. By the end of the month. So really what you're doing is you're looking for the very bright object in that direction. In that direction in the east or southeast. So let me just go back a little bit here. Now, technically, let me go back to the first. In the beginning of the month at sunrise, Jupiter is going to be up here, but let's go back to like 6 a.m. That's usually a pretty good time. What you'll notice is that throughout the month, you'll notice Jupiter gets higher and higher in the sky as I move every day forward, okay? And actually, by the 31st, or 30th or 31st, Saturn is actually starting to make its new appearance. Now, I wouldn't go out looking for it yet because I would wait until like mid-January. But technically at 6:30 at the end of December, Saturn will rise in the morning. But, you know, I wouldn't look for it quite yet. So anyway, those are the planets for the month. Remember, again, in the morning, it's pretty much Jupiter. And then around sunset at night, if you look to the southwest, you will see Venus and Mars getting closer together throughout the month. So let's take a quick talk about, or have a quick talk about the events for the month. Okay? So let's start at the beginning of the month, December 1st. Not much going on. Sunset, in fact, let's go a little bit later. Let's go like 5:15 or so. And so what you're seeing over here in the southwest, if you can see Mercury, you can see that. But you see the moon starting to creep in. It's going to be a very thin crescent moon on the 1st. Now on the 2nd, the moon gets a little bit thicker, and Venus and the moon are only about 8 degrees apart. On the 2nd, the moon is 8 degrees to the right. So it'll actually look something like this when you get the sizes right. Okay. And then on the next night, the 3rd, the moon is directly above Venus, about the same distance away. So again, if we get the sizes right, you're going to get that sort of view right there. Okay. Then, the following night, on the 4th, it starts getting closer to Mars, and you see them closer together. You also see the moon being thicker. It's going to be out a little bit longer. And then on the 5th is when you find the moon pretty darn thick as far as a crescent goes, and to the left of Mars. All the time, it's usually about, from the 2nd to the 5th, the moon is about anywhere from 6 to 8 degrees away from a planet, whether it's Venus or Mars. It's pretty darn close. And so nothing much happens for a little while. In fact, if you notice, the next night the moon's a little thicker, a little bit higher. And then on the 7th is when you have the first quarter moon. That's when the right half is lit up. You can see it even before sunset and all the way to about midnight. And then, again, not much happens. But take a look and see if you notice what's happening. The moon's moving around the ecliptic, and it gets really close to, to this star right here. And what star is that, you might ask? Well, that right there is Aldebaran. Okay? It's a pretty bright star. It's the brightest star in Taurus, the bull, which you can see is this V constellation on its side right now. But it's there, and the moon is also pretty darn close. In fact, why don't I center on Aldebaran? Or, there you go. I'm going to center on that. And let's take a look at what happens throughout this night. So let me just pass time by. And so what you'll notice, around 5:40, the moon is in, over here. But then as time goes by, the moon actually crosses in front of those stars, which aren't all that bright, so we don't usually care about them being occulted. Which, by the way, this is a lunar occultation of Aldebaran. What's going to happen is the moon's going to slowly pass in front of Aldebaran. Why is this important? Well, Aldebaran's a bright star, so that makes this easy to see. It's also pretty red, which is pretty cool too. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Now, this won't be perfectly representative, but near my home, what we'll find is right around 1107. In fact, that's exactly the same as Washington, D.C. Aldebaran's going to disappear behind the dark part of the moon. If you look there, that's not quite lit up yet. That's because it's still a waxing gibbous. Waxing gibbous. And then what's going to happen is the moon's going to pass in front, and then it's going to reappear right about... Now, it's going to appear on the sunlit side, so it might be a little tough to see, but it'll appear, it looks like about 12:23, which according to my notes, 12:21 for Washington, D.C., which it's just really neat to see. Now, I would suggest using a telescope trained on Aldebaran. If you have a tracking telescope, that's great. If not, it's not that hard to sort of keep that all in one area, especially if you have a wide field of view. But that is what's happening on the night of the 12th, morning of the 13th. It should be a really cool one to see. It's way up there high in the sky. Excuse me, getting over something. Way up high in the sky, easy to see, easy star to find. Go for it. I do have in the show notes a link to where, if you're not in my area, when you can see this. Okay. Then on the night of the 13th, so let's move ahead. Night of the 13th, or morning of the 14th, you see a full moon right above Orion, which makes it a pretty neat thing to see. Now, it kind of drowns out Orion's stars, but it's still pretty neat up there. Then, on the 13th and the 14th is the Geminid Meteor shower, which normally would be awesome, except this guy right here, light pollution. The moon puts a lot of light pollution out there for us, which is not good. It drowns out the weaker meteors, the ones that you don't really see. But you still should see some of the best and brightest out there if you do go out and dress in layers. Give it a shot. I would just suggest not looking at the full moon. Try to look away from it, since that's where the less light pollution will be, and then you're not damaging your night vision with the full moon. So give it a shot. You might see something. So then, let's see. So that's the 13th and 14th. And, whoa, there we go. What you'll notice is that night after night then, if you look, you'll see that the moon will move across Cancer, across Leo, and moving toward Jupiter. Okay? And throughout this process, it's getting a little thinner and thinner every single night. And then you'll notice that on December 22nd, it will be pretty close to Jupiter. Now, I did forget, back one day, the 21st, that is December 21st, that is the winter solstice. That's when we have the most amount of night in the northern hemisphere, the most hours of nighttime and the least number of hours of daytime. Pretty much there's a better astronomical definition, but that's a practical definition. Longest night of the year. Also, hence why we have celebrations around this time. Now we're finally going to get a little more daytime, so let's celebrate the... We're getting over the hump. But anyway, 22nd is Moon and Jupiter getting close together. Just look southeast after 2 a.m. If you look around 2 a.m., they'll be close to the horizon. But as you wait and it gets closer to sunrise, they get higher and higher in the sky. And also, you also have Spica here, one of the bright stars, or the brightest star in Virgo, kind of making a line out of those three. And, Jupiter's only 4 degrees down and to the left. And as the sun rises, if you're really good, you might be able to catch Saturn down there. I don't think you will be. But anyway, if you take a look at the morning sky, at 6:15 every morning or so, every night the moon's going to get lower and lower and thinner and thinner. until the 29th, which is when we have a new moon and thus the darkest skies. And that's pretty much it for the month. Excuse me. So I apologize for that. That's it for December for that. Let me just take a minute and talk about the constellations. So as far as the constellations go, let's go to mid-December, and let's go to a little after sunset. Let's go like 5:30 or so, 5:45, and let's look directly above us. What you're going to be able to see directly above us after sunset, maybe, in fact, let's go to 6 o'clock. You'll see Pegasus, the great square of Pegasus, and Andromeda over here. If you wait till later in the night, you'll notice some other things popping into sight, like Perseus, which has a nice double cluster. I believe that's M34. Ask Dave. He knows the numbers off the top of his head. But Perseus is there, and so is Auriga. Okay. And if you wait until midnight, you'll get to see Auriga being straight up above you with Gemini down below that. And if you wait till the morning, then you get to see some of the spring constellations like Leo and Ursa Major. Well, Ursa Major is a north circumpolar, but you can see its legs, which just so happen to appear in the spring. But let's talk about, let's go back to a little after sunset, okay? And let's look to the west, and you should still be able to catch Cygnus the Swan, Aquila the Eagle, and Lyra the Harp, the summer triangle in the night sky, with Delphinus over here. So they're the spring constellations. They're setting. That means spring is way done. Technically, we're still in the fall, and that's why the fall constellations are pretty much right above us in the south after the sun sets. But then let's start talking about these winter constellations. So you're not really going to be able to get much out of the winter constellations until about 8 o'clock. Now, 8 o'clock, Orion is already well risen, okay? And you can use his belt stars to help you out. Now, if you take his belt stars and make a little line from the bottom to the top, and then keep going, you reach the bright star Aldebaran over here, which we already talked about is getting occulted on the night of the 12th. Don't forget, like I did. And then if you go a little bit higher up, you'll get to the Pleiades up there. Also, if you follow those in the opposite direction, hit the belt stars, follow them down, you'll see Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, which is part of Canis Major. Let me move those up a little bit so you can see them. And from there, you can see 6 stars and make a nice circle in the sky. You've got, let's start with Aldebaran and Taurus. If you move down, you can see Rigel in one of the brightest stars in Orion. Down and to the left, you see Sirius, the brightest star in the sky, also brightest star in Canis Major. Up and to the left, and you find Procyon, the brightest star in Canis Minor, which is the 2 stars that look like a dog. Okay. Move up, and you'll find Pollux and Castor, the twin stars, or at least 2 stars about the same brightness in Gemini. And then up and to the right, you find Capella, which is the brightest star in Auriga, and then come back down to Aldebaran. That's the winter tour. So, yeah, with that, that's pretty much the night sky for the month of December. I would encourage you to go to skymaps.com, get a sky map from there, print it off, get you outside. And also, I like Skyview Free is a new app that I enjoy. Actually, it's not new, but it works out pretty well. I even use it with my 3-year-old, so it'll help for the beginner. And yeah, I'd like to wish you happy holidays and very clear dark skies for the month of December.